question of whether we should remain a Christian country.
So there's no policy that you would adjust to make sure that America's like a Christian nation, only the members of, not Parliament, but Congress and the presidency are Christians. Like, there's no policy changes you make.
I would make a policy change that you have to be Christian to be elected.
Do you think that kind of plays along the line of being meshing of church and state, though?
No, I don't think so, because the Establishment Clause is really speaking about the church as an institution. It's saying that the church has this moral authority, the government has a civic authority. And it's a question of, is there a conflict of interest when the two institutions are merged? In other words, are the priests going to be magistrates? Are the pastors going to be, are they going to have a sort of civic authority over us? And what kind of corruption does that create? Does the state corrupt the church? Does the church? So I think as long as you separate the institutions and just say you have to proclaim Christ to be elected, I don't think there's a problem there.
Do you think AI is part of God's plan for humanity? Or do you think it's man playing God?
Well, the Catholic Church takes the position that technology is neutral. It's how you use it. So there's some Christian sects, like the Amish, the Mennonites, who will say, well, technology is evil. But we believe that it could be used for good or for evil. And I think that everything that happens is part of God's plan. So it's happening, it's part of it. The concern is how our concept of AI might undermine our concept of what makes us human. Because what makes us rational is that we have memory, will, and understanding. We possess that trinity of things. Our conception of the past is memory. We don't live in the past, we have memories of it. We have will, we make decisions, we guide our own actions. And we have understanding because we truly contemplate the meaning of things, of our sensory experiences. And that's what makes us rational as humans. AI doesn't have any of those things. It certainly has memory, it stores information, but does AI have will? Is it self-directed? Can it set itself in a direction to make a decision? I don't think so. Does it have understanding? Does it truly comprehend the things that it's saying, let's say for an LLM? No, it doesn't really understand. If you understand what an LLM is, it's prediction, it's a statistical model. And so I think what is called artificial intelligence is sort of a misnomer. It's really like an advanced calculator. And I think that maybe what will wind up happening is that in our quest for sentient AI or an artificial general intelligence, is we'll find that whatever this is that we're creating is fundamentally distinct from the human self. And it might actually teach us something about who we are and what makes us distinct. So I think maybe the AI engineers, they might be in for a rude awakening when they realize that a genuine AI is literally impossible because it will never be ensouled or conscious in the way that a human being is.
Nick, tell me if I have this right. You regularly went to underground Latin Mass during COVID. Is that true?
No.
No?
No.
It's AI hallucinating on me. But did you go to Mass during COVID?
I did, yeah.
Got it. And, like, how were they doing that? Was it not shut down?
Well, they made some, I think in the early days, they didn't have anything in place. This was 5 years ago, so I don't really remember. I think at some point, we came back, and everybody was wearing masks. And the major change that they made is the sign of peace. So in the old days, when you did the sign of peace, you would shake hands with everybody. Peace be with you. But now, you do wave. So that's the only real major change. They did masks, they did that, but overall it was basically the same.
Do you ever regret not becoming a priest?
No, I don't think I was up for that.
No?
No, because I wanted to be a priest when I was very young. I used to tell my mom I wanted to be a priest when I was like a little kid, which I forgot about. She told me about that. She's like, you always wanted to be a priest. But I don't think that I have the discipline for that, honestly. I think that that's a vocation. You're called to do that by God. And I, at a very early age, I wanted to do it, but I think that I'm a little too maybe undisciplined, eccentric to be able to live a life like that.
Because you're a smart guy and you're a moral guy. You definitely try to put yourself in vices, but like like it seems as though you kind of put yourself in a situation where you kind of have to say inflammatory things that might not be morally in line with you. Maybe they are, but something like being a priest or being a monk might align with you more. I don't know. I'm just thinking about this.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, because it's true. I mean, when you're in politics, you're in the world. You're dealing with the practical reality of power and flesh and human beings, and so it's like anything. You engage
Fuck you,
with it,
dude.
and
Fuck you.
it's like the abyss. You stare into the abyss, and it stares back into you. And in a sense, there's something maybe. As a priest, you're insulated from these things. When you're in the monastery, you don't have to think about things in a practical way. You don't have to think about those sorts of things because you're focused on the moral law and you're living in a sort of moral bubble, essentially. Not to say that priests don't sin, of course, there's tons of that going on, obviously. But I guess I would consider myself, my vocation is I'm more of a warrior. You know, there's this idea of like you're a priest or a warrior. As somebody that's a true fighter, I think I just have the spirit that is driven to compete and fight, and especially fight for justice in the world. And I don't think it's even possible to act in a completely priest-like way when you're doing it. I try to do that, but I think it's easier said than done.
If you had 5 minutes with Jesus Christ, what would you say to him?
That's a big question. I would ask for forgiveness. I would ask for a pardon, certainly. I would ask about the secrets of the universe. I would want to know, I would want him to tell me the whole plan. He'd probably have a better idea of what to say to me than I would have a question to ask him. But I guess maybe more than anything, I would just beg for a pardon. I would beg for mercy and forgiveness. But I don't know that I would ask him any kind of theological question. That would be a much more humble approach. If I could ask an historical figure, I'd have tons of questions. But someone like you're talking to God, it would be more like, please don't send me to hell.
What are your prayers like?
Well, mostly I pray before I eat. I pray when I'm in danger. I pray when I drove here. I had to drive to the ghetto to get here. I had to get off at Independence Boulevard to get here, so I was praying then. But mostly I just pray to set my intentions in alignment with God's. Because I think a lot about prayer. And when people think about prayer, they think about petition. They pray for something. God, do this for me. Give me the strength. Protect me from this. Give me this. And I always thought about that. Is it that we didn't pray to God enough, that we don't live forever, that our family members die, that bad things happen to us? Because I don't think anybody prays. People say, please save my sick parents. Please, I don't want to get hurt. And then people die all the time. So you say to yourself, did they not pray enough? Did the prayers not work? And I think that the real object of prayer is more a presence, being in the presence of God and allowing maybe God to work on you, maybe opening your intentions and your will, sort of inviting God in and letting God guide your actions. It's really more about, people think about it in terms of God help me in my life. It's more like God guide my life. Use me for your purpose. That makes sense. Sort of setting the table in a different way. And so I sort of think about it that way, more like, let me say the right words to do your will. Let me do the right things to do your will. Give me more faith. Help me kind of develop as a person. Protect me from temptation. It's usually things like that.
Do you have a journal that you write down your thoughts in? Do you think there's any significance to dreams?
I do. I'm a huge believer in dreams.
Have you ever had a dream that later became true?
Yes. Yes, and it was disturbing. I had a dream in August of 2019, and it was so vivid that I talked about it on my live stream. And I said, I had a dream last night that I was at a Charlie Kirk event, Turning Point USA event. And maybe I'm not going to tell it perfectly, it was a long time ago, but I said it, and years later, somebody pulled the clip. And they said in the dream, my followers were asking Charlie questions and pressing him, and they were being thrown out of the event. And then a month later, at Charlie Kirk's Culture War tour in Colorado, 2 of my followers went up and pressed him about the Israel lobby and about legal immigration. And it started the Groyper War, which was my followers followed him to every one of his events and asked him these questions, and they were being thrown out. And it became such a huge story. Eventually, Don Jr. was asked these questions at UCLA, and it became a national story. It really put my career on the map. And when that happened, I had totally forgotten about that dream. I never made the connection. But like I said, about 2 or 3 years later, somebody went back and found that clip and said, 2 months before any of this happened, you dreamt it. And I talked about it on the show because it was that. It affected me that much. So I'll never forget that. That was a very weird coincidence.
Does that happen a lot to you?
No, I think it was only that one time.
Yeah. Because I remember Candace mentioning some text messages about Charlie's dreams. Maybe him knowing that he was going to die. I think someone said that those messages were fake. I'm unsure. But I guess if you had 5 minutes with Charlie Kirk, what might you ask him?
I really had no interest in discussing with Charlie Kirk. You know, Charlie has become sort of a martyr now, and of course, I don't believe he deserved to die. I wish he was still alive. That being said, people forget, what was Charlie Kirk's business? He made $140 million per year at Turning Point USA. $140 million per year for a campus organization. You don't make that kind of money unless you are really taking money from everybody. Everybody will give it to you. Billionaires, Silicon Valley, special interests, India, I mean, you name it. They were taking money from everybody. And there's this debate about what Charlie Kirk's real views really were about Israel, for example. And the pro-Israel people say Charlie was with us until he died. The anti-Israel people say, no, he was changing his mind. Now, how can both of these things be true? Because Charlie would tell people what they wanted to hear. He was everything to everybody. And so to the pro-Israel crowd, he was pro-Israel until September 10th. To the anti-Israel crowd, if he had been alive for a couple more months, he would have really stuck it to them. And I think at the bottom, he didn't really have many real convictions. Other than that, I do believe he was a sincere Christian, and for that, I respect him. I do believe that he was pro-America, and so I respect him for that. Outside of it, we had a very intense and vicious feud because he was entrenched in politics, and I was the congenital outsider. So I really wouldn't have much to say to him, to tell you the truth.
I have to know, what do you think about Erica Kirk?
Well, you know, I got a lot of flack for this.
Yeah.
I criticized Erica Kirk. But look, here's the thing about Erica. Nobody wants to say anything about Erica Kirk because she's a grieving widow. And so that's just decency. Nobody wants to attack a young woman who lost her husband to a vicious public execution and now has 2 fatherless children. That being said, nobody would be saying anything if she went home and grieved. But she didn't do that. She immediately assumed control of Turning Point USA, which already was one of the most influential, powerful, conservative nonprofits and for-profit entities in the conservative movement, and which became far more powerful after Charlie died because of his apparent martyrdom. So, within 72 hours, she becomes Charlie's successor. And now she's in Washington, D.C., it seems, all the time, with J.D. Vance, with Donald Trump, with all these other powerful people. Now, I'm going to tell you what I don't like. I don't like when people take tragedy or a sob story or something that's emotionally impactful and they use it as cover so you can't ask questions or criticize. And I feel like that's what is happening here. Like I said, if she were a widow grieving, no one should or could say anything about her. It would be out of line. We're not talking about Erica Kirk, the grieving widow. We're talking about Erica Kirk, the president of Turning Point USA and close personal friend of J.D. Vance, heir apparent of MAGA. We we can't ask questions about who this person is. We can't criticize or be skeptical of who she is because she cries. See, that I feel is manipulative, and that I don't like. So when people start to tell me, for emotional or moral reasons, you can't ask that question, that's when I get even more suspicious. So Erica Kirk, I don't know her, and